Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check, 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 check. Welcome to the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host for all things college football. Let me double check all the goods, all the good things that we're going to be checking out today. Sorry, rough intro. Welcome to the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tegan Randolph for all things college football. This is powered by Kretschmann Media. If it is the first time you are seeing this beautiful mustache or this minor league baseball hat, go Rough Riders. Welcome to the show. We talk about all things college football. If you want to know what today's show is about, you see the topics down below on the ticker, almost like it's old school ESPN. But nonetheless, this is a pretty straightforward show. This is the easiest show of my life, frankly, for the fact that we are going to be sticking around one topic. Did something happen last night? Can anyone ring a bell? Does anyone know what happened last night? Oh, that's what happened. The Indiana Hoosiers won the national championship. Let that sink in. I'm going to repeat it for the people in the back. The Indiana Hoosiers, the team that has the most losses in NCAA, the team that has never seen a 10-win season until last year, has just won the national championship. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you've been keeping up with that. One of, if not the best story in college football. Arguably, I don't know if this is a take, but you could make an argument that is the best story in college football history. I mean, it's like if TCU managed to beat Georgia in that national championship and then some, if TCU never had any kind of semblance of winning in pedigree in their history. So we'll be talking about that game. We'll be talking about all the different angles around that. We'll talk about Indiana's side. And I think the story that not a lot of people talk about, and understandably so, where does Miami go from here? I think there's a lot of assumptions that Miami's just going to be right back there, and maybe they're right. We will be talking about that. But nonetheless, we'll talk about the game first. We'll talk about Indiana's future, and then we'll be talking about Miami's future. But first, in a beautiful Nashville that is going to be getting some snow. Not ready for that. Gotta get some lip balm. It's so dry in Nashville. I think I mention it every single show. But for Chris and everyone who will be watching this, let's go ahead and dive in. Miami did two of the three things they needed to do to win this game. And unfortunately, you have to be perfect against the Indiana Hoosiers. You can't leave any stone unturned. The first thing that we said on this preview and prediction around the national championship, the first thing we said is you can't shoot yourself in the foot. You can't leave any type of error left on the field because the margin is so thin when you play Indiana. When you're facing off against a robot, you cannot make mistakes. And the little things really do add up in a 60-minute period. We have to talk about this. Miami needed to be perfect. They had to be perfect. A team that in their losses, when we think of Louisville, we think of SMU, it wasn't for the fact that they got overwhelmed by talent. It wasn't for the fact that they just had an off night. It was penalties. It was missed opportunities. It was turnovers. And I think a lot of us, when we preview this game, a lot of people were waiting for the Carson Beck moment that we had seen time and time again throughout his career. But really in this season, a lot of people were waiting for Carson Beck to make that grand mistake. And yes, he made a mistake in the final drive, but leading up to that, I thought Carson Beck played a very solid game. I thought he managed the game like he had been able to do the entire college football playoff. What really became the Achilles heel for Miami that not a lot of people were talking about, unless you were really getting into the weeds around it, was special teams and the lack thereof quality, because there was key moments in this game that you didn't get the best effort from Indiana, but unfortunately Indiana didn't have to give their best effort to win this thing. You needed to give your best effort because the best version of Miami was clearly capable of winning this game, but it truly comes down to these things specifically. That turnover, you lost a turnover battle 1-0, and it was on the final drive, which we'll talk about. But 7 penalties, that could make the difference. Whereas Indiana, they didn't play their best. They ended up giving up 5 penalties of their own right and a missed field goal. You left 3 on the board, you lost by 6, and then a blocked punt for 6. That's the difference. Those key plays, those moments that build up to a game, you could frankly put it down to 3 simple plays that made or break this game. We have the turnover on the final drive, you have the missed field goal, and then you have the blocked punt that yielded into 6. That was 9 total points right there left on the board, and then the missed opportunity to go score the game-winning touchdown, and then the ensuing game-leading PAT following that. Unfortunately for Miami, like we mentioned, they were able to accomplish 2 of the 3 things, and I'll detail those 3 things right now. The first thing we said is you had to be perfect. You could not shoot yourself in the foot. You couldn't have these moments that we talked about throughout this game, but they were able to accomplish the 2 other things, which I think is impressive in its own right. You had to be able to run the football. If you were going to put the entire pressure of Carson Beck on his shoulders to win this football game, that's not something I felt like Miami was capable of doing, was really saying, hey, Carson, go win us this football game, because that's not the quarterback he had been all season. He'd been a great game manager, but he's not a playmaker. He's not the one that you need to rely on to win the game. He can make a couple plays here and there, but it's not like a Fernando Mendoza where you could go rely and really put the ball into his hands to go make a play. And then you needed to be able to have those key moments. I think a lot of people say the key moments and it's very generic, but the way that I would detail it is if we were to insert, say, for example, Miami had won the national championship and we put in the CD of their story of the 2025 season. And there's the Notre Dame game, and I think of the CJ Daniels catch and all the little moments, the Malachi Toney run in for Texas A&M in the first round, and then all the big moments, the run-in for Carson Beck against Ole Miss, all these key moments that would be, showcased in slow-mo. What would show up when the national championship moment got there? When they won the game, who was going to make those plays? And that happened. You had the Mark Fletcher huge run that broke this game in what felt like a stalemate for this offense. It really gave them some life and some confidence that they can get some points on the board. And then the Malachi Toney run in, which 22 yards to the house. Those were the key moments that you needed to have and be able to run the football. Then you throw in the fact that you were able to create pressure on Fernando Mendoza, who didn't have the best game in the world. But the thing with Indiana is they're going to stay the course. They're going to continue their perfection and not really let the game sit in the middle of the field. If you give them the football, if you give them the opportunity, Indiana is going to take it every single time. There is a reason that they were 16-0. There is a reason they were as damn good as they were. And Miami gave it to them with those key moments. I mean, like I said, they may seem insignificant at the time. Yeah, missed field goal sucks. But when we get to the end and you're reflecting on the game, those key plays, whenever we hear coaches truly say, yeah, we just have to make one more play than them, this is what we mean. This is what we talk about, because when Indiana made one more play than when Indiana made one more play than Miami, those games and those moments really stack up. I think you can make a fair argument that Mendoza in that 12-yard run, what ended up being a QB draw, that he said himself he saw zone on the left side, and I believe it was man coverage on the right side. And it truly was a bet on yourself moment for him to go scramble in what was ending up to be the greatest play in Indiana football history. Now, is the standard very high in terms of greatest plays for Indiana football? I think, frankly, the play at the end of Penn State is right there. But you can make a fair argument that this was the greatest moment in Indiana football, because it really sealed that they were in the driver's seat of this game, especially as we got late into it, because that big Mark Fletcher run really started to build up the anxiety that maybe Miami, a team that was sitting in their home stadium, was going to be well equipped to make another run to come back and win that football game. That run was so impressive for so many different reasons, because Mendoza took the hit and then jumped across the line. Like, when we put in the CD for their national championship run, that's the moment that I'm going to think of is Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman, stepping across that line and giving them the touchdown when they so desperately needed it. Another shout out is Charlie Becker. You know, I think Elijah Surratt didn't have the best game. I mean, he made a drop that just wasn't him. Like I said, Indiana didn't have their best game. They were making mistakes that they hadn't done all season. They had detailed it time and time again that there was moments that we saw from Indiana that you just traditionally don't see from them. And you had Charlie Becker, a guy that really stepped up throughout this entire college football playoff. And it became a moment where when you needed the big plays, not only were you going to put the ball in Fernando Mendoza's hands, but when he made that decision, he throws the most beautiful back shoulder in the entire country. We knew that when he was transferred to when he transferred to Indiana from Cal, that he threw the best back shoulder in the entire country. This is why he was able to put it on the money every single time. And Charlie Becker, if it wasn't for him, they're probably not winning the national championship. Once again, just an incredible run from Indiana. And Miami, it's unfortunate because it truly felt like you were right there. Obviously, you had the opportunity at the very end to go win the whole thing, but little things really stacked up into what could have a situation truly where maybe it was Indiana that had to drive down the field to go score. Maybe it would have been the inverse of what we saw towards the end of the game, because it is a lot to ask, not only for a guy like Carson Beck to make one game-winning drive to go win the whole thing, but to do it in back-to-back sessions. It's a very difficult thing. And I do question the idea of taking a shot there, especially as you kept dinking and dunking your way down the field. But nonetheless, he thought he had something. Even the wide receiver said himself, it wasn't on him. It was truly on the wide receiver to not realize the ball was in the air. But nonetheless, congratulations to Indiana in this game. But we have to take a step back and really assess the impact of this game, and we'll do that here shortly. Need some water. Apologies. Can't believe we're in the dreaded off season. Oh my gosh, man. I'm not ready for the off season. I think the off season now is completely fine. I think the off season is something that you just got to get through. It's when we get to July, it's when we get to June, and we really are having the same conversation over and over. Who's the dark horses? It gets to a point where you just want to watch some football. Call it spade spade. You just want to watch some damn football. I think we should talk about the title for a second. Indiana football is about to enter a dynasty. Now, I understand that's a bold claim to make. I'm not trying to make a hot take for you to spam the comments saying that I'm wrong. I'm more projecting an announcement that Indiana football isn't going anywhere. This is not a story that we once thought it was coming out of 2024, where they got an easy schedule and then got smacked down by Notre Dame, and then they would go back to the basement of the Big Ten. The fact that they were able to not only retool this roster to be better, 10 times better, and go 16-0 and win a national championship, then you take a peek, because I think a lot of people will turn their brains off once we get to the end of the season. A lot of people will become dormant to college football until we get to preview magazine season in the summer. What Indiana has been able to do in the transfer portal is something that I'm going to tell you right now here in January has been remarkable, and they're going to be a problem. I get it. You're going to wait. You're going to let it stew. Maybe you'll watch a couple articles here and there, but you're really going to watch basketball. Maybe you're just going to go watch the MLB, the Masters, whatever it may be. College football is now going to go to the back of the line, in the back of your mind, and it's not going to be something that's very present. I'm here to tell you right now what they've been able to do, getting Josh Hoover, Nick Marsh, and a ton of other pieces on this roster. I fully expect Indiana football to continue to be contending for national championships, because their method so clearly works. What they are focused on, and if you have not been following this with Curt Cignetti, it's the fact that they put so much focus into preparation and bringing in guys that have seen a lot of football. We've talked about it time and time again. The fact that they get 23, 24-year-olds into this building who have seen a lot of football at this level, and then they put the preparation of film. That is the number one priority for Indiana football, and what Curt Cignetti has been focused on time and time again. And then you throw in the fact that they're going to have more NIL funds. I mean, we have a contract extension. A lot of times with coaches, contract extensions mean we're going to have a bigger budget for you. And with the biggest alumni space in the entire country, you mean to tell me that Indiana football is now just going to whisper away that they're not going to be contending for college football playoffs. The expectation now is to be competing for national championships. You've seen it. It's right there in front of you. I don't know why anyone would be pushing back to say that Indiana is just not going to be right up there in the conversations with Ohio State, maybe Michigan's, the Georgias in the world, because they've frankly earned it at this point. I get it that you may be looking at the recruiting classes and all these different things and saying, well, there's no way this is going to be sustainable, right? We can't expect an Indiana team. Maybe they just got a lucky couple of years, and we look back in 5 years from now and say, that was a good run for Curt Cignetti, but they're never going to get back to the mountaintop. I'm not willing to bet on that. As you look at this team and how they construct in their process and the coaching staff that Curt Cignetti's been able to build up, I mean, it's not like they were just, taken for their lunch money in terms of a coaching staff like we saw with an Oregon, like we saw with an Ohio State, where we knew that their coordinators were focused elsewhere. This is an Indiana team that had cohesion. They knew exactly what they wanted to be, and for them to go into 2026, they know exactly what they're going to be in 2026. I'm telling you right now, this is not a team that is just going to disappear. This is a program that is really building up to being something special, and they already are special. But I mean, when we look in 10 years down the road, Indiana is going to be a team that's littered through all these record books that are going to be consistently in the conversation for the college football playoff and then some. I have so many things to say that are just glowing reviews about Indiana, but the process is what makes it so scary to think about, because now when we see Indiana and they don't have these 4 and 5 stars littered through the roster, they broke the blue chip ratio. They broke all these trends. What do you think is going to happen when now they have the investment to go get these 4 and 5 stars and get that drum going consistently? That's what's going to be so interesting to me, because I really do believe, will we see a trajectory of Indiana football still keeping the standard very high? Will there be even an uptick in production? I don't know how that's possible with 16-0 being the record, but frankly, is there going to be any kind of variation as the talent level more than likely increases? That's my main question, but the question shouldn't be whether or not Indiana football is here to stay. The question should be, how much higher can they get? Curt Cignetti is going to be someone that I think will enter all-time conversations. I think he already is a very fair argument to say Curt Cignetti, best coach in college football. Now, I'm not going to say that. I think Kirby Smart still stands as the best coach in college football, but you've never seen this. You in your life will more than likely never see a rebuild and a turnaround of a program to this caliber. Truly understand and let that set in that Indiana football, with the most losses, the losingest program in the entire NCAA, a program that before 2024 had never seen double-digit wins, never, has just won the national championship in a 2-season turnaround. First season, 10-plus wins, a first round out in the college football playoff. We all depicted it as, oh, they had an easy schedule and they weren't really that good of a team, but because of their record and the fact that they're in the Big Ten, we'll give them a spot, and they get smacked around by Notre Dame. They then lose their starting quarterback, be able to flip him into a Heisman contender with this system and this offense, and pull out a 16-0 season, a national championship run. Curt Cignetti has a very fair argument to be the best coach in college football. Now, the reason why I have Kirby Smart as the best coach of college football is because I feel like you have to do it for a little bit longer. In a sport like this, with the volatility and the roster turnover, I do think you have to build up some merit for a longer amount of time. But if you tell me that Curt Cignetti is the best coach of college football, I'm not going to bat an eye. I'm not really going to fight against it. I may even agree with you on some of the arguments that would be made in terms of him being the best coach in this entire sport, because of what he's been able to accomplish is an anomaly. And that's why I kind of want to see what is it going to look like for a couple years. Now, if I'm a betting man and you tell me, hey, how much money are going to willing to put down that Indiana football is a powerhouse, they're a program to stay, I may put a second mortgage on it. I may put all the money in my bank account on it, because I still really do believe that Indiana football is one to stay, and they could be a potential dynasty for the next 5 seasons. There's so many takes to be had about this team, and there's so many takes to be had about what Indiana is truly. It's just ridiculous. Like as you real like I'm not one that lived in the South, or let me refrain. I'm one that lived in the South my entire life. Indiana football was always a basketball school. Indiana football, or Indiana in general, was always a basketball school. Indiana was always a laughing stock. You didn't really, like, as I started making content in 2019, I never really wanted to talk about Indiana. When I was previewing the Big Ten, it was just kind of, they're going to go 3-9. They're going to go 2-10 every single time. And now they're headlighting the show. This is something that I'm really trying to appreciate and understand what I'm seeing for the first time, because there's going to come a moment in my life in 20 years where I'm going to get asked a question about, you remember that Indiana team? And maybe this is a team that wins multiple national championships. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that because I think they can't. But nonetheless, I'm going to get asked this question. I'm really trying to understand how I'm feeling in this moment, because I think it's one that is going to be so unique to this time and what they've been able to pull off. Where does Miami go from here? A team that was 6 points, really 7 points away from a national championship. A team that had such a miraculous run. I mean, I've talked about it time and time again. 10 seed was on the outside looking in for the college football playoff for many, many weeks. Every iteration, it was Notre Dame in front of them. They get the opportunity because they had the head-to-head against Notre Dame, and then they go on a run, a Cinderella run. I don't care what anyone tells me. This is a Cinderella run by all intents and purposes. You just see the U and the history in Miami football, and you don't see it as a Cinderella, but this is what a Cinderella run will look like in college football. Nonetheless, we could talk about this team, and it's incredible, and you really should soak in the moment because these opportunities really don't come often. But when we get to next week and the following weeks and then months go by, what is Mario Cristobal going to do to get to that next level? Because this roster didn't have a talent problem. I think if we were to look at where are the areas that this Miami team can get better, especially knowing that they're returning Mark Fletcher, they're going to have a ton of great pieces back. You have Malachi Toney, one of the best wide receivers in the entire country. There's a lot of great pieces here, but you're also losing a ton of pieces. I think of Keontae Scott. I think of Mesidor. I think of Bain. I think of Carson Beck. I think of a ton of different pieces. Francis Mauigoa being another one. There's a lot of key pieces at key positions that you're going to have to retool. Now, luckily, if you're a Miami fan, you have all the resources in the world to go get guys. It sounds like Jordan Sean, that tackle from Colorado, is really interested in Miami, and rightfully so. They're more than likely going to have Francis Mauigoa go first round in the NFL draft. Jordan Sean is a first round talent. That just makes sense. And with the NIL package that's going to more than likely come with it, who wouldn't want to go play for Miami at this point? But I think if you were to dissect this team, you knew going into the college football playoff, Miami was a flawed team. They were not running the football as well as they were when they got to the playoff. They were a team that shot themselves in the foot time and time again. And they had a quarterback that really you could win with, but not win because. That's not a disrespectful thing to Carson Beck. Carson Beck was exactly what you needed him to be if it was a game manager that can control while the defense was really dominating. But I don't think that's something you want to rely on for an every single season type of archetype when we're looking at the quarterback position. That's why if they do get a Darian Mensah, which is to be seen right now as Duke has just already announced that they're going to be suing Darian Mensah, college football doesn't make sense right now. If you get a playmaker like Mensah, that could really elevate this offense. I think there's a couple of questions to really be had here. What can Mario Cristobal do to mitigate some of the challenges that they've had that have been self-inflicted wounds? Penalties have been a problem during the Mario Cristobal era for quite some time. And unfortunately, I do think that was baked into their loss in the national championship. The same could be said of what can you do on the special teams side of the spectrum to really elevate that to where it's not a weakness? Because as I'm sure Mario Cristobal is very much learning right now, as he's more than likely going to have to be reflecting on where could we evolve? Where can we get better here? It's really going to be a realization that when we get to this level and we're facing off against the best of the best at the very end, our weaknesses, regardless of how small they may be, are going to be exploited. So what can I do to elevate special teams? What can I do to elevate the quarterback position to where that I'm not feeling like we have to put all the weight onto a Mark Fletcher to run the offense, or gimmick plays for Malachi Toney to get the ball into his hands? Can I trust my quarterback and put the ball into his hands to go win us a football game? All these different dynamics are at play. All the while, can you hold the standard of what this defense was able to play at, knowing that you're going to be losing two of the best pass rushers in the entire country, one that's going to be more than likely a top 10 pick, and the other one more than likely being a late first, early second type of pick? That's a lot of production that's going to be leaving the building. There's a ton of questions with Miami, a lot of which that you can feel pretty confident they have the resources to at least get the guys that you could feel good about in the moment, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be automatic solutions. If someone was to ask me, do I believe Miami could get back to the mountaintop? I would tell them absolutely. They have all the resources and the ingredients in the kitchen to be able to get there. Now, I've been critical about Mario Cristobal time and time again, and he's proven me wrong. He seems like a coach that many people have talked about during this national championship run as someone that has been able to evolve, someone that has been maturing as a coach. And if that's the trajectory that he's on, where he continues to rise up his ability to manage the in-game situations, to really get the maturity and the identity of this team really there, which we saw time and time again, they were physical, they would punch you in the mouth. They want this to be a rock fight. And that's the Miami way. That's what he was playing as an offensive lineman during that era. So if he's able to get that reflected and continuously pump out talented players to replicate that production, the question doesn't become, can Miami get back to the mountaintop? It more becomes a question of, when will they win the whole thing? Because the biggest thing that I think Mario Cristobal has to make sure that he takes from this team is that we don't get 5 years down the road and we said, damn, that was the moment. That was the opportunity. Kind of like the Houston Texans during this college football playoff run, where CJ Stroud was the one that lost him that game and wasted away what was seen as an all-time defense, and we get a couple years down the road and say, damn, that was their opportunity to go on the road, face off against Jared Stidham with that all-time defense to potentially get to a Super Bowl. You don't want to get that same way with Mario Cristobal, where, damn, if we had just made this play here, that was our opportunity. That was our chance to go win the whole thing, knock off Indiana, and we bring the U back, which I understand Mario Cristobal hates that terminology, but the biggest thing you want to make sure when you enter this 2026 offseason is that you don't get to that point, that you say, we are going to be a shark that's always circling the contention of a national championship, because that's the true sign of an elite coach, not a guy that can just get there and maybe win the whole thing, but can you consistently, with all the volatility that comes with the portal and roster management and coaching management and all these different pieces that make it very difficult to be a college football coach, can you be a guy that consistently has your program competing for national championships and being in the conversation? Nonetheless, I think that is inherently valuable. And I believe Mario Cristobal at this point can be that coach, because he's going to have every tool in the toolbox to get there, and he knows what he can do to replicate this. It's the execution. And that's the only question that I can't answer, you can't answer. Only he and his results can answer that question. And that's it, folks. I'm looking at the time right now, 28:47 seconds. 30-minute show. National championship. I gotta be honest with you guys. This is a weird feeling. We are entering the offseason. We're going to be doing, if you're watching this live, or if you're going back and watching the show, which I know some of you guys do, to give an idea of what we're going to be doing on this show, especially for the offseason, is we're going to be doing in-depth breakdowns of almost every single team that I can talk about. Conference breakdowns, schedule breakdowns, recruiting, transfer portal, predictions, all the traditional things that you see from college football creators. We're also going to be talking about the NFL draft a ton. I'm going to be at the Shrine Bowl this weekend, so more than likely not a Sunday show. I may try to do one in the hotel room, but I will be talking with some of the top prospects. I'll tell you about my experience. Some of the guys that I'll do a Shrine Bowl show about all the takeaways I have. I'm going to be taking notes. I'm going to be recording my experience, all these different things. That will happen next Tuesday. But I truly will always emphasize this. If there's something you want to be talked about, The comments are there for a reason. I see every single one of the comments. So truly, if there's something that you want me to talk about, I write it down on a little pink sticky note and I'll make sure it's on the show. But with that it being in mind, that's the Stadium Pulse. My name is Tegan Randolph. If you like sports, I know our CEO, Chris, on the CEO Sports Show, does some fantastic work. If you don't believe me, click on the channel tab. Go check it out. He runs Kretschmann Media. It is fantastic work that we're doing here. And 2026 is going to be an incredible year. But nonetheless, I got to go. I got to go make me some dinner. So I will see you guys next time.